even as a pantser, you need to have an idea for down the line, specifically in regards to power scaling. At least in our genre, power scaling is incredibly important. And I personally believe you can write fantastically intricate plots while pantsing, but you can't write fantastically intricate power scaling while pantsing. You need to have some kind of plan there.
This is the CritRPG Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything lit RPG, progression fantasy, and Royal Road. Hi everyone, and welcome to the CritRPG Podcast, the only podcast that invites whatever that is. With me today is Sir Bedivere the Mad, author of Bunny Girl Evolution. Pictured is not the bunny in question. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah. Just like let that seep in. If you're listening to this, just picture a figure in gray armor.
It's like Alphonse from Fullmetal Alchemist.
Yeah, very much so. Like a helmet with teeth. And the teeth like gape open and show like the void beyond whenever Bedivere talks, and I had to look at that for like about an hour now, because we did like an hour of bonus material that you can find on Patreon if you want. But without further ado, Bedivere, sell me on Bunny Girl Evolution.
I mean, I feel like the title kind of sells itself.
Okay, done, sold.
It's. I mean, my tagline for the book is: "She's a bunny, she's a girl, and she's going to evolve."
Yeah.
And I mean, if that doesn't interest you, I guess there's a cool redemption arc, maybe, because I'm pantsing and I haven't thought that far.
Yeah. There's a German pun I can make, but no one would get it, so I'll skip it. But do you want to go into a little bit more detail here about the plot? Why is she a bunny?
Yeah, so the story it kind of starts off as a pretty standard monster evolution, where just kind of one day she just wakes up and she's a bunny.
Okay.
This is of course after dying. She finds herself in a dangerous forest, and really the only advantage she seems to have is incredibly high charisma stat, and this mysterious skill called the Mark of Fate, both of which get expanded on later. I think, actually, this is a good selling point. I think that I have the most unique take on charisma in the genre.
Okay.
And charisma-based charisma-based skills.
Okay. I don't suppose you want to spoil.
I mean, like, I'm not against spoiling. Are you against me spoiling my own book?
No, but I think we should leave it there because I really want people to read your book.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, with that being said, how about we move to the next question? What's the best advice you've ever gotten as a writer? I mean, we've talked about this a lot already, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of good advice, and a lot of the advice I've gotten that's good. I mean, kind of what we talked about in the bonus content, which you should check out on Patreon.
Thank you.
Is a lot of the best advice I've gotten has not been on its own necessarily great advice, but it's more like how I interpreted it. Like it's really hard to put into words, because
doesn't that apply to every advice?
It does, but I think the problem with writing advice, I mean, advice in general, but specifically writing advice that I've seen, is that there is no universal advice. It's different for everyone. You know, like you can watch your Brandon Sanderson lecture on like promise, progress, payoff, and you can focus on that in your book, try to improve it. But some people are just naturally really good at that. Like they just do that on their own. They don't need to be told to do that. And in fact, being told to watch that video and work on that can actually hinder them temporarily, at least. I think that in the long term, enlightenment always helps. But in the short term, it can be like, oh, they're thinking too much about it. They're overdoing it, stuff like that. So it's really hard to say like, oh, this one piece of advice is great. I guess the best piece of advice is keep an open mind to advice. Like, even if you think, oh, that's not applicable to me, my plots are already good, or oh, that's not applicable to me, my characters are already pretty good. Like, if people praise my characters, obviously they're good. And I guess my best advice is to always assume that they're not as good as they could be, because they never are. They're never as good as you want them to be. They're never as good as they can be. So any advice can be good, but at the same time, you also have to be able to identify when advice is good and when it's not. Advice is really difficult to give for this reason. It's hard to give non-personalized advice. Like, if I see someone's story, I see what they're writing, I can like tailor my advice, like, oh, you need to look at this, you need to do this. But general advice, I think, is just don't listen to general advice.
That's a good advice.
Because it might not be right for you. You might need something else. Because a lot of advice is also dependent. A lot of skill is dependent. Like, you can't, maybe your characters are bad, but you can't really make them better until you work on your plots more also. So there's a lot, like, you have to take more a holistic approach. You can't just focus on one. You can't just take any random advice on the internet you see.
I think, like, what I just want to, like, point out two things again. So one thing you said earlier was that you really shouldn't, you should always consider, like, hey, you can do something better here, or maybe it's not as good as you think it is. And we've talked about this in the Patreon episode, as Patreon content as well. Be very careful about that if you are already someone who naturally doubts themselves, because sometimes you're better than you think you are, and that's like, again, exactly as Bedivere said, that's bad advice for you, right? So personalized advice is always way more applicable than general advice, and even personalized advice can be wrong because people are very bad at turning off their own filters.
Yeah. And I mean, even then, that doesn't mean you shouldn't look for that general advice. Because I mean, I mentioned Brandon Sanderson a second ago, and I had watched his video lectures way back in 2020, and I was just like, I mean, like, I've read one Brandon Sanderson book. It was all right, I guess. I'm not really sure about this advice though. And then I went back and watched them all again, like, the other week, and I was like, wow, this is all incredible advice. Like, he's spot on just about everything. And I didn't realize that 5 years ago.
The problem is Dunning-Kruger.
Kind of, it's kind of that, and it's also that I wasn't in a position to be able to take that advice. Like a couple months ago, I watched his new plot progress payoff, or promise progress payoff lecture, and that was like, wow, this is exactly what I needed right now. Like, this is the problem for me right now, and I was able to implement that. And like my Patreon, like, so I guess since I talked about this in the bonus content, I guess I'll re-go over it right now. But in Bunny Girl Evolution, I totally pantsed it. I had a really great first 9 chapters. I kind of meandered a little bit for the next couple chapters, and then I took a really hard right, just kind of off the premise. And it wasn't necessarily like a bad arc. Like, that arc, I did some major dev edits. It's a lot better now. It's fine. But the big problem with the original version of that arc was that I just kind of broke the promise of Monster Girl Evolution, or Monster Girl Evolution, Monster Evolution. Yeah. But like, I put her in a position where she couldn't evolve anymore, which you really shouldn't do.
Not in chapter 9.
Definitely not in chapter. Well, it was chapter 14 when I did that. But yeah, like, I meandered into that, and that's something you really shouldn't do, because that breaks the promise of this book. Which in case I'm unselling anyone on my book right now, I have went back and fixed that. Now it's no longer she's just stuck here and she's a slave to the plot. Now she's proactive. She does things. She works on her skills. Like, she is evolving. She's just not directly evolving her form just yet. And then she gets right back to that after that arc.
Do you think one can say, and I just had a thought here. Do you think one can say that the general progression of advice is, you hear something, maybe or maybe not, doesn't really matter, you don't really get it, you're like, okay, well, that's kind of self-explanatory, and then you go and you make a mistake of some shape or form applicable to that advice, and then you go back and listen to it again, like, oh, now it makes sense. So you think that that's kind of like how it goes?
I think that is one of the typical ways. Yes. Yeah.
Which,
Another way is that I actually experienced almost exactly that, because Bacon McLeod was sharing his what was it, scene and sequel, which is like he shared, he shared one article. I know that the original article was by, or the original idea of this was by Jim Butcher's teacher.
Yeah, like
I forget her name right now.
Yeah, she wrote the fantasy fiction formula.
Yeah, her. And that was her scene sequel thing. I read the scene sequel article he sent, and I was just like, I don't really get it. And then I started accidentally implementing it in my own work, and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And then I went back and read it again, and suddenly it made so much sense.
Exactly.
And I think that's true with a lot of advice, where you don't get it at first until you have made it's hard to understand until you've made the mistake that makes you need that advice.
And one way of improving as a writer in general is reading one of these advice things, looking at it, and then going, I don't get it, but then trying it out anyway, and then failing with it. Like if you feel as though like you've done everything right the first try, chances are you haven't.
Right.
Chances are you've probably, like, if you feel like you did everything right in the first try, either you haven't, and like you haven't because you're not feeling it, or you have and everything is perfect and you're that great. That is also a possibility. Or you're feeling it and you think you've done everything right, but you actually really haven't, and now you have an even bigger problem than before. Because again, the point I was trying to make earlier is, in order to like appreciate advice, you first have to know how something doesn't work. I feel personally, yeah, because the Dunning-Kruger effect is real. Like if you believe that you're hot shit, even though you've done something for like 2 months or whatever. I mean, I've done that. Everyone has. Then advice is going to be wasted on you.
Yeah, and I think that goes along with something that Brandon Sanderson said a couple times. Like I watched the first 3 episodes as they came out of his current. Like he just had a new lecture series this semester, and then I binged the rest of them the other week. But one thing he said a lot was, until you've written 6 books, you're still a beginner author.
Yeah,
and I wholeheartedly agree with that. Like, it's like I know I was very confident in my like second book, my first book, and now I look back and I'm like, dang, I made so many mistakes. Like I did so many things wrong.
I think the 1,000,000 word mark, definitely. Like for him, like 6 or 7 books, that kind of tracks. 6 or 7 books. If you're writing them at like the 150,000, 175,000 word count, then you're at about 1,000,000. So totally think that the first 6 books are just a learning experience. And some people lean into that, and some people get, again, and we talked about this. You think like we both agree that like luck isn't a thing, but I still believe that some books just kind of hit the zeitgeist more than others. And I do believe that there are like tons of hidden gems on Railroad that no one's ever heard about, that have like 10 followers or less.
Yeah. I think part of that though is that those hidden gems, Bacon showed me one of them the other day. It's called Spire's Spite. It's 16 months old, never hit Rising Stars, never really did anything, but it was very consistent. It's got, it doesn't have chapter numbers, so I don't know, but it's got something like 160 chapters, it looks like, about.
I know who wrote
that. And it just kept plodding along.
Yeah. I know who wrote that.
Yeah. And then there's one more that I found the other day. I guess I'm giving shouts to some stories that flew under the radar today, but Limitless Path.
Oh, yeah.
I have never heard of this story. I had no idea it existed. It's over 2 years old. I was randomly scrolling through Popular this week, like page 7, and I found it. It's got 412 chapters. They just kept writing. It's got over 1,000,000 words. And I just found it randomly, and I looked at it and was like, dang, this thing has 10% Patreon conversion. Yeah. To anyone who's watching who doesn't know anything, 10% is very, very good. That's like top of the line. That's like the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah. Like there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot, and I think a lot of those that Like, okay, so and I feel like even Spire Spite is already pretty high up there, because I don't think that like the
it's
algo
gotten a lot bigger now.
Yeah, I don't think that the algo
Bacon
even grips you unless you have like a certain amount of followers, right? So
the rising star algo is the only one that really matters on Railroad, because that's the only one that actually affects visibility. Because like the popular this week is literally just amalgamate views.
Yeah.
And like trending doesn't work, so we don't really need to worry about that. So like rising stars, your visibility options are ads and shoutouts, unless you can get onto popular this week or best rated.
Like, or best rated, yeah. But like, so what I'm saying is that there must be a bunch of stories on Railroad that someone writes who has like 100 followers or less, because they don't show up in any of these things.
Right, and I totally agree. But I also believe that a lot of those stories give up when they only have those 100 followers after like 4 months.
Yeah.
And a lot of them just kind of die. I think there are probably a lot of dead stories. I think the ones that continue end up like will inevitably at some point end up like Spire Spite or Limitless Path, where they eventually do get their following.
It would be cool to find out if that's actually true or not. I mean, we can look it up, because people are surprisingly consistent if they were just writing for fun, right? If someone really is just writing for fun, and that's their entire goal, and they're not writing for like follower counts or whatever, and they're not even like checking anyone else's story for anything they know, it's kind of like a bad version of Plato's cave allegory, where for all they know, 20 followers is really great, right? And so they keep writing, and they interact with like the same two dudes who comment on all their chapters. That must exist.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's evidence of like, we talked about Spire Spite and Limitless Path, but I mean, there's also much bigger examples in Sill or Years of Apocalypse, both of which just kind of started. They posted. They didn't hit Rising Stars for a full 2 months. Both of them had pretty much identical arcs, which is kind of funny to look at. They didn't hit Rising Stars for a full 2 months. When they did hit, they were too old to have a really like a proper run, so they fell off after not getting more than halfway up the list and only getting like 2,000 followers. I say only 2,000 because both of them should have gotten a lot more. And now both of them, or Sill is on Amazon, are doing very well, and Years of Apocalypse is near the top of popular this week and has an insane Patreon. Both of them have insane Patreons, but like, I mean, I'm a firm believer in quality eventually wins out. If you keep at it and your book is good enough, it will eventually get there. If it's on the market enough, like that's like there's some caveats. Like if you're writing a romantasy, like a dark romantasy, you're not going to do well on Railroad.
But. Yeah, I also like again, we're talking about this earlier. Like it's always a bit of like a balance, right? Because like I've tried really hard and really long to like make Torchbearer work on Railroad, but I just don't think it's the style of story that like it's a deeply introspective story, right? In a semi like I think it's a good story, and yes, it has some weaknesses that I still need to like really like shore up in some way, shape, or form at some point, but not right now. But I don't think it will ever be like a hit. I don't think it even will do a good Patreon conversion. Doesn't mean it's not. It might not sell in the right hands of the right people, right? So, like, imagine that. Maybe not like Torchbearer, but any book like mine would. There are thousands of books who have never been on a Railroad and sell really, really well, right? And they don't have a Patreon either. And yeah, I think that like, I think what I want to say with this entire segment is that if you're not on Rising Stars, if you don't have like, killer Patreon conversion, by the way, if you have like 10 people following you and 2 of those are Patreons, you're like 20% conversion, right? That's awesome, right? So just keep at it. I think that's the point that both Bedivere and I are making at the same time. Him from a more
yes. At the same time, I'm going to contradict my own advice of keep going. is that you should be doing the right marketing. I think the reason that those stories don't take off immediately is because they don't know how to do the right marketing. They don't shout it out. They don't do shoutouts. They don't do ads. But if they had, they would have been bigger. Like none of them did that. They all started very slow, and I think that a lot of the hidden gems are in the similar boat. At the same time, if you're flying under the radar after doing ads and shouts, your story is probably not going to do well on the site.
I also think that there's something there. Like if for example, like if you had like, let's say like 100 chapters up and like 0 followers, and you ran ads now, and even if you had written the best story in the world, I don't think you would get many followers, because people are looking at it and go like, why is no one following the story after like 100 chapters? I'm not even going to check it out.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's definitely a little bit of that. But I think that there are enough people like I get referrals from like page 30 of latest updates. There are enough people who are bored enough or generous enough to give that story a chance, that even if the ads don't give you a lot of growth immediately, they will over time. Like they will eventually pay out. Yeah, I just don't want to like encourage someone to keep writing into a dead end. But then at the same time, to contradict that, since I'm just going to contradict my advice a bunch, is I learned a lot more writing my book 2 of Bunny Girl than I did writing book 1.
Yeah.
And I'm learning a lot also writing book 3. And I think that if I had given up on Bunny Girl, like, oh, I screwed it up, it's dead now, and tried writing a different story, I would be a lot less good of a writer at the moment than I am now.
Yeah, totally. Like the I will say it again. I've pretty much said it like every third podcast or whatever. Finishing my book taught me way more than starting 10 books ever did. And I also strongly believe that editing my first book taught me more than finishing the book did. Because by going through it and like having like a very, very thorough edit, I now understand it way better. We talked about this earlier as well. In order to like really, really plot or really like edit a book really well, you have to completely understand it, and you have to be able to like completely dissect it. And then the next step is putting it back together without making it feel clinical. And that's hard. At like if you're looking at it, like the gigantic tomes that we're writing. If I had written like a 75,000 word story, it would be much easier to edit it, right?
Yep.
Because like you don't have to think about like, oh my god, when do I foreshadow this? When do I foreshadow that? Like, yeah, I don't have to think about it.
Can a team of has-been teen idols save the world? Find out in the new series Boy Bands and Dragons. When Neverboyland is sucked into a magical world, their reunion takes a back seat to staying alive. But if they can get over the past drama that drove them apart, they may find that even pop stars can be heroes. Come and discover your new favorite read. Our comeback tour is Slaying Monsters, the first in the Boy Bands and Dragons series by Kim Smuga Otto, dropping on Kindle Unlimited, October 25th.
What's one thing that you learned while writing that you would now be doing differently or are doing differently?
It's that even as a pantser, you need to have an idea for down the line, specifically in regards to power scaling. At least in our genre, power scaling is incredibly important. And I personally believe you can write fantastically intricate plots while pantsing, but you can't write fantastically intricate power scaling while pantsing. You need to have some kind of plan there. And I think that's messed up a lot of stories. Like, I guess I'll use a nice big example of Naruto, where the power scaling got just way out of hand as soon as like that first arc of Shippuden finished, where just suddenly there was no like chakra limits didn't exist. You can just use all of these big attacks however many times you want. You can blow up entire mountains and then do it again, and then again, and then again, keep doing it all episode. And like that caused issues because then Madara ended up being way too powerful, and then he had to bring Kaguya in to like it causes issues. I think power scaling is probably the biggest thing you need to plan if you're a pantser. You don't need to plan like, oh, in book 1, my main characters are going to do this, and then book 2 they're going to do this, and then they're going to have this kind of character arc. You can totally pants all that, but power scaling needs to be planned. And one more thing that I've learned recently, this is much more recently, is you need to set things up for way down the line. Like I kind of learned this, I kind of realized this while reading Primal Hunter, because I think he was setting up Nevermore all the way from book 2, when Nevermore doesn't start until book 10. So that's like 1.5 million words between the two, between when it first started being foreshadowed and the end. And I'm fairly certain Zogorth did not plan out every beat in between there and then, but he set it up. So as a pantser, you need to set up things for the far future, even if you might not ever actually make it to that.
I have one advice on that, and that it's always fun to add details that you have several different ideas about when you're pantsing.
Yeah.
So
right.
One way that I wrote Torchbearer, I think that made the story like good, is I had a lot of things that I added, and then I thought about it. It's like, oh wow, what does it even mean? Like, you know, like in this other world, like if both worlds are parallel, what does that mean in the other world? Like, how is that like related?
Right.
And then what could that mean? And that's also a very good thing to keep yourself writing, because if you force yourself to not answer that right away and not write it down, because that way lies madness. If you write to find out what all those weird little like idiosyncrasies that you're adding actually mean, that's a lot of fun. That's like the most fun I've ever had writing.
Yeah, I mean, I do that. I do that a lot, where I'll set something up like, oh, in this culture they do this, and then like 20 chapters later I have to be like, wait a second, why do they do that?
Yeah.
And then I've created a whole new section of lore, and maybe even a mini arc based on this one random throwaway line from 20 chapters ago. At the same time, I also do it with really big plot points, because like stuff that's going to be big reveals down the line, because like if I don't know what it's going to be, the readers definitely don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
So it will be it'll be a good reveal no matter what.
Except for that one fucking reader who comments the second you put it in, and he completely nails it.
Honestly, I used to be annoyed when that happened. I actually really like it now.
I really like it too,
yeah. I used to be like, I guess my plot twist isn't good enough because they predicted it so quickly. But at this point, I'm like, that's good, because one thing I remember watching the Brandon Sanderson lectures was that he said that like the plot twists should still always be foreshadowed. You can't just like suddenly throw a wrench out of nowhere. It just becomes kind of Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, wrench ex machina, yeah.
Right. Yeah, Deus Ex Wrench, exactly. But so
wait. Wrench ex machina. Right?
Deus Ex. I think he said Deus Ex Wrenches or Wrench Ex Machina.
Yeah, Deus Ex means like a god out of, right?
Yeah. But I know that, like, I mean.
Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter.
I don't remember what it was. Yeah. Either way,
one of the two.
You can't throw that in. So whenever I see a reader guess a plot twist like spot on, I'm like, awesome. That means that they're not going to be mad at me for making this plot twist, because it was foreseeable.
Yes,
it does make sense.
Yeah, that's really good. That's a really good point. And then the other question I had was, how do you make sure that your power scaling doesn't go like completely bonkers?
So I have an enormous spreadsheet. It's 300 rows and like 100 columns of basically just math. So I have for Bunny Girl Evolution, I know what her stats are going to be when she reaches godhood. I know what her stats will be, because I already have all of that planned out.
Cool.
And because I know what her stats will be at the highest level, I can, and I know what they are at every level in between. I can scale the power of things she fights, or at least I can guesstimate the scale of everything else. I don't have like this was a lot of work just to set this up, so I didn't set up any other characters, unfortunately, but I can make solid estimates of what they look like, what their abilities are, based on what I have mapped out for her. And then, of course, because it's a system, it has rules. So I have all the system rules mapped out. So I know that physically it's impossible for a character to be more powerful than this certain level. So I have a top level planned out, and I have some landmarks in between, so I can gauge the power properly.
Okay.
And I probably don't always follow this perfectly in the story, but I have that reference. I have those reference points there, so it doesn't get too out of hand.
I'm wondering, kind of like thinking about how you're doing it and how I'm doing it, because I'm not doing that. I think what I do is I always keep a limiter in mind when I add something new. Because I feel as though, like, I mean, Sanderson always says this, that it's not the power is interesting, but the limit.
Right.
And I think that that's one thing that like really holds me back from, like, really delving deep into progression fantasy, because I never give readers, like, or tend to not give readers that immediate, like, oh wow, this is completely OP thing, because that's fun to write once, and then you're struggling with for the rest of the entire book or series, right? And then suddenly you're writing like an OP protag story, like. Think about it,
right.
like if in Torchbearer I had, like, not given Sam some sort of limit on how she can use the logic. Like the first time the, like, spoilers, right? The first time the laptop gets opened, she like takes over all the robots in the room, and then boom, suddenly robot army, right? That's not fun. Like, I mean, it is fun for like that book, and then suddenly it becomes like this, like, completely different story. You're breaking the promise to your reader, because the promise was not like, hey, this is going to be like a fun, like suddenly a fun romp. Suddenly you're Jake's marketing it.
Yeah. And I mean, on the other hand, you can also just take a page out of the Shansha playbook and just increase the scale.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can always go up. That's another. I guess that's another lesson that I've learned, is that you want to map out the power scaling, but at the same time, if you screw that up, you can always go up. You can always make things stronger. Because, like, I mean, as much as Naruto's power scaling was faulty, you got to admit that, like, those fights with Madara were really like when he had that, like, second boulder, like, that was like it was a crazy moment. Like, you can always go up. It'll make sense in the moment, at least. Maybe it won't make sense and it'll cause problems, but like, you don't have to nuke your story because you screwed up the power scaling.
True.
And it gets fun.
But
you ever read Dungeon Diver?
Okay, he's a friend. Yeah, like I've we've hung out since when he had like 200 followers or something. So I've been
do you know what the main character's current stats are in Dungeon Diver?
No, but I guess it must be in the millions.
Higher.
Oh shit. like okay, so to be honest, like, okay, so Dungeon Diver, I love the premise. I love the premise of like a guy living in a dungeon world and trying to like make ends meet.
Right.
Like the way you set it up. And then the second it became clear, like, that, okay, this is going like going through the roof. Like, okay, good. I'm cool. Like, it's a really cool story. I don't believe anyone else has ever managed anything like it. But I really wanted that other story at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, I want you to keep guessing what the main character's current
billions,
stats are. More.
Trillions.
More.
Jesus fuck. I don't know. Like, okay, so is this basically like the equivalent of like a clicker game?
I'm honestly not sure. I haven't gotten very far into it yet. I want to, but his current stats are, I believe, the last stat sheet I saw was 600 sextillion, around that for one of his stats, and the other ones were like in the same range.
Yeah, you can lean into that. I mean, like, again, we're like probably this is like, this podcast is now like sharing the wisdoms of our great leader Zogarth, but he said something on the pod where he was like, at some point Jake is going to fire an arrow through the sun, and behind it is going to be an even bigger, more evil sun, or something like that.
I mean, yeah,
like
that tracks.
again, that completely tracks. That is a very, very cool story. It's not something I could read indefinitely, right? Because it's for me, that is like that gif of that truck never quite colliding with a fucking pole,
right?
Because like I want that catharsis. I want the character to like go like, cool, this is done now. Like we're good.
Right.
Like Cradle, I think, completely nailed it because the entire thing
I'm
was
in the middle
like
of Cradle right now.
Yeah.
So no spoilers. I am actively reading that.
Oh well, just know that the end is really, really good and it fulfills the promise of the entire series.
That's good.
Yeah, it's called Cradle.
I mean,
yeah.
The way I see Primal Hunter is less like that truck video and more like you get the truck video and then you see it hit the pylon and it's like, whoa, that was really cool. And then Zorgar's like, but there is a bigger truck and a bigger pylon.
Yeah. Like an even bigger pylon. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and like it's like those. Have you seen like the videos that have started going viral recently? There's like the hyper realistic like simulator where they're like, what happens when we launch a bus off a ramp at every single like at like 50 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour, 300, whatnot.
Oh,
I mean, I guess if you haven't seen it, but anyone watching who has seen it, it's kind of like that, where it's just like, it's like, oh, that was pretty cool when it went off the ramp at 30 miles an hour. But what about 50? And like you just want to keep seeing it. And I think that a part of that is that in those. Yeah.
But at some point you're hitting light speed, and then you can't even see it anymore. And then at that point, it gets boring to me.
Right. So, but you see, in those videos at the top, it says like bus off a ramp from like 30 to 300 miles an hour. So you know that the ending point is 300. So you keep watching. It's like, oh, that was pretty crazy. But what's 300 going to be?
Famously, that's what Zorgoth said. There's going to be no end to this story.
Yeah, I mean that's true. But at the same time, he introduced not just a god, but one of the 12 most powerful gods in existence within the first. I don't. It's been I mean, I binge read the entire thing, so I don't remember what chapter, but within the first book. So we know that at the very least, until he reaches that level, we know what the end goal is, and obviously, based on like Jake's character. I mean, even if like this isn't say like Zogar's going to like milk the series or anything, but like Jake's character he's going to be the strongest, so he's going to keep going.
Yeah, completely.
So like, but like so like we know, but until then we know what the end goal is. We know that he's going to eventually be as powerful as a primordial. So every single like really cool like he shoots an arrow, like he insta kills a thing. I don't know if that's a big spoiler because he does that every tier. Like he insta kills something in the tier above him. So like that's a really cool moment. But like, what about when he's in A grade? What about when he insta kills an S grade? Like, what about when he insta kills a god while still in S grade? Like,
it's
like that's
for me like that's the entire point. Like, it's I guess it's not interesting because like what I'm more interested in is like, how does the world change after he does that? How does everyone else respond? And how does that impact him as a person? Like, what does it do to someone? And for better or for worse, like I honestly like I wouldn't be doing this podcast if I didn't like CritRPG. But we are not necessarily known for deep introspective plots.
Right.
So sometimes I really want like, but again, fucking Zorgarth said it again, like sometimes I want a hot dog, sometimes I want sushi, right? So it's perfectly fine. And Zorgarth writes hot dogs. Yeah.
I mean, I love Primal Hunter. I am sub to the Patreon. Like I enjoy that series a lot. But like, honestly, actually, I think that the characters in Primal Hunter are severely underrated. I think that like one of my favorite parts of book 1 and 2 was William's arc, which I thought was really fascinating. Like I've actually thought about doing a similar arc for a similar character in the past, and I thought that was fun. And I think that compared to a lot of other progression fantasy I've read, the Primal Hunter characters are a cut above. Like they're not like, wow, these characters are incredible. I'm so attached to them. Like I get emotional with them. But it's like, I recognize that these are characters that could exist, and like I can enjoy them for what they are. I think one thing that he does really well is makes the world feel big. So even though Jake is kind of like the focus of the story, he's not the center of the multiverse. Other people are having their own stories alongside him or separate from him.
Yeah.
And
I think like Crom gets a lot of flack that's like not deserved. At the same time, like that's maybe why I'm like more of a Hero vs. Monsters reader, is because there it kind of like really goes down that like kind of like the chosen one trope. Like it's quite obvious that like Jason is like very, very, very important in some way, shape, or form in the future. But it's also maybe being made clear that he's just one of many who could.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's important, because otherwise, like, if the ending is inevitable, then why are you even reading it?
Yep.
Why do you think speedrunning RPGs aren't that popular?
Speedrunning aren't that popular. I think it's because speedrunning shares a lot with slice of life, where it's like, if you're speedrunning, that means you know exactly how to do it. You've already done it before. You're powerful enough that you can speedrun it. So the stakes aren't really there. Like the stakes are, I'm not going to make this time, rather than I'm not going to make it out of here alive. Which, I mean, that's not bad. I enjoy stories like that. But I think that when you have a story like that where the stakes aren't quite as important, the other stuff matters a lot more. So, and at the same time, I also think that it's hard to do a speedrunning, because, like, I mean, if you've ever watched actual speedrunners, they're like doing crazy, like just constantly button mashing to do these crazy techniques and stuff. And there's not really much room for that other stuff when you're if you're doing a speedrunning story, like if you did it just like that, there wouldn't be room for those character interactions, the thing that makes like slice of life that good. So I think it's just, I'm not saying it's impossible to make it work, but I would be really interested to see someone who did make it work on a large scale. So I guess I probably need to check out Speedrunning the Multiverse then.
Yeah, because I think Speedrunning the Multiverse is like the entire thing is like he's been doing this for a while, and then something goes wrong. Right. So I think that's like a good premise, because like, again, if you're looking at it from like a purely like narrative perspective, where's the conflict, right? That's what you were saying with like slice of life. If he knows everything is going to happen, then where's the conflict? Like, where's the danger? Where is the thing that we can ask? Okay, will the character succeed this time? Right? What's at stake? What's personal about it? Because like, hey, if you're speedrunning it, like, right? I struggled like this making it personal part is something I always come back to, because it's so important. Why does the main character care about this particular situation more than they care about sitting at home drinking tea? Right? You've already passed Cradle 3, right?
Nope. I finished. I read Cradle 1 in like one night, and then I had finals. So I'm probably gonna pick that back up as soon as we hang up on here.
Well, there's this like one thing I think I can spoil, and that is like Will always puts little outtakes in the end of this book, especially for the audio. And so one of them, Lyndon and Yaren, are sitting in a room, and Yaren is like, "Hey, have you ever thought about not doing any of this?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Have you ever thought about like not putting on all these like really grueling training regimens and just, doing something else?"
Yeah.
He's like, "No, I haven't." And he's like, "Okay, should we just do it?" He's like, "Yeah, okay, cool." And then like he puts up his feet and he's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Absolutely nothing." Because like stories are usually not about happy people, because happy people don't want to go out and kill a dragon.
Yeah.
Why would you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I like the is it called the inciting incident? I know that's one name for it. But like at the start of the hero's journey, there's like the thing that like destroys the comfort of home.
Yeah, or there's a call to action, like the call to action,
like
call to adventure.
Someone comfortable at home isn't going to go on a deadly adventure
unless they really aren't that comfy.
They really aren't, exactly.
Like it's this, it's a very British thing, I feel. Bilbo Baggins sitting in this comfy cottage, and then the wizard comes in. He's like, I really shouldn't go out. I really don't want to go on this adventure. But like, I mean, this is like 12 dwarves and a wizard. I mean, like, how could I not? Right? And he tries to like convince himself that this is like the right thing to do, even though he really wants to do it. And that's hard to write, to be honest. So Tolkien did a really, really good job at it. I don't think have you ever read any lit RPG where the main character is like, you know what? Adventure. Except for like VR MMORPGs. Those don't count.
I mean, in a way, that's what Primal Hunter is. Like, there are multiple points in the series where Jake can just be like, we have the sword saint. We don't actually need me. He can just relax, kick back, chill with his family. Because like his family's all there, they're alive, they're happy. He spends some time with them in the series, but like he always goes out for more. That's because that's just who he is. He's not satisfied sitting home at home.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't. The problem is I only recently, like this year, basically started reading in the genre properly. Before, it was pretty much all webcomics.
Yeah. Is there a webcomic? Because I'm not even talking about like, hey, the evil guy has been defeated. Why do I go out again? I'm just going like, I am a regular, average Joe Schmo. Why do I go out in the first place? Like, right. I don't think that has ever like been done like a real Hobbit start for lit RPGs. I think the only way you could do it right now on market, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, is System Apocalypse. And it has to have happened a while ago already.
What do you mean? Like,
or you could do like a fantasy thing, I think. But the thing that came to immediately comes to mind when I'm thinking about this premise is System Apocalypse has happened like a couple of years ago. Maybe main character has like even been born like post-apocalypse, or like just gets a system like a while later, and then it's like, cool, I'm done. Like this is great. And then still goes like, actually, you know what? This quest is broken. By
Jesse Patrick.
No. I just looked it up yesterday. Sorry.
Yeah, I just looked it up just now. It says J.P. Valentine.
J.P. Valentine, yes. It's such a good book.
Yeah, it's
a classic. Not as many people have read it as they should. It's a very, very funny book. And in it, the main protagonist, like everyone gets a life quest when they get the class, and the protagonist gets a quest: go to the next town and buy a loaf of bread. That's a life quest, right? Her mother has like the quest of like make the comfiest sweater you've ever made, right? Because she's a seamstress, and right. And so the like main character like goes to the next city, and like the bakery burnt down and there's no bread, and so she's like, you know what, I might as well just hang out with my friend whose main quest is like kill the evil dragon, so and so and so forth. Like I'm just a courier, but whatever. So I'm just gonna hang out with this guy and I'm gonna help him like do his quest. I think that counts.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean the System Apocalypse is already over, and like I mean that's a very, very common Korean premise. Like I mean that's what solo leveling is. Like it's the System Apocalypse already happened, and now we have this whole society built around the new powers.
I haven't read Solo Leveling yet.
You should read Solo Leveling. It's good.
Should have watched the anime or read it.
I haven't watched the anime. I've heard it's very good. I've read the novel and I've read the manhwa. They're both They're both good. I prefer. I mean, the manhwa is kind of what made it big because it has crazy art. But I've heard that the anime is just as good and smooths over a bit from the manhwa.
God damn it!
So
yeah, I probably like downloaded a webtoon and just like scroll through it this evening.
Yeah, I don't think it's on webtoon. I think it's on Tapas.
Okay, yeah.
I read it a long time ago before I knew that there were official places to read it. So I can't tell you where I read it.
yeah, probably should then. Yeah, like I don't know. Yeah,
webtoon. That like System Apocalypse already happened is a very common Korean setup. There's a lot of like I think the genre is called like hunter novels or hunter society novels, where there's hunters and these are the people with the system and the superpowers, and they hunt the monsters and the portals that now exist after the System Apocalypse.
Ooh, okay.
So I'm like I can't think of any that are like Hobbit like of them, but there are a lot. So I'm sure that there is one.
Yeah, I think many of them kind of like, like in the 20th century when Tolkien wrote The Hobbit, people were sitting at home a lot and drinking tea and like being quite content with life, but maybe not really. And like there was adventure out there, like there were like ancient Incan temples that no one had ever heard of. I don't think that hits these days.
Yeah. Also, actually, I did think of one just now. It's not a Hunter Society one, but it's called. There are two translations of the title depending on where you read it. It's either The Lazy Lord Masters the Sword, or Reformation of the Deadbeat Noble. And the premise of that novel is that you have this slacker, this this like the prodigal son basically, where he's just he lays around, he doesn't do anything all day, he does absolutely nothing, and then one night he just has a dream of a guy devoting his life to master the sword, and then he's like, I should do that. And then just one day he gets up and starts training with the sword, and the whole story is about his journey after he just decides like, you know what, I want to learn the sword. And it's very well done. It's one of my it's one of my favorites. I think that it's really good. I don't know what else to say.
Don't. It's fine. Like there's so many premises I still haven't. Like you said, like there's more stories than there's time. I really just want to finish my thing. Like if I want to finish Torchbearer before I do anything else. But as we talked about before the show started, I don't have any time, and all my writing time gets taken up by other bullshit. So yeah, we'll get there. That being said, what's one book that you love, and explain why it's awesome?
That's a tough one because there are a lot of series that I really enjoy.
Just pick one at random.
I guess within the genre, Hell Difficulty Tutorial. I think it has a rough start. I don't know if it was difficult for me to get it through because I did read all of book 1 in like 2 nights. So I don't know if it was difficult, but it definitely was like, I don't know if I'm going to continue this. And then it gets better in book 2, and then in book 3 it almost made me cry, and I was like, wow, this is one of the greatest progression fantasies on the market. And now at this point I'm also on the Patreon. I read every chapter pretty much the minute it goes live. And it's definitely one of my favorites. I think that the characters are really well done in Hell Difficulty Tutorial. Like all the characters are independent. They all have their own things going on, and they're all tied to Nat by circumstance, and at first by circumstance, and later by personal bonds. And I think it's really the development of those bonds is really well done. The development of Nat from a lot of people call him a sociopath. I don't think he ever was a sociopath. He was just an edgelord, and he's still an edgelord. But he's like his unreliable narrator. Like I just think it's a very interesting and very well done character dynamic between everyone in that series.
Certainly is disarming.
Yes.
Gotta hand it to the author. Anyway.
Yeah. And then I guess since I kind of wanted to say this outside the genre, I guess my book would be Speaker for the Dead by Orson Scott Card, which is the sequel to Ender's Game. Yeah. Which I think it's been a while since I've read it. I need to reread it. So I think Speaker for the Speaker for the Dead might be one of the best books ever written.
That is,
like, full stop.
I have read the synopsises of these things, and it just goes complete. Like the first one's like almost like an academy novel. I hear.
Yeah. So
almost?
The first one is academy. It's about Andrew Ender going through like battle school, getting really good so he can lead the forces of humanity against the shoot. I can't remember what the non-slur name. The in-world slur is the buggers.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
aliens.
The aliens.
Okay,
and then
so
book 2 is a 3,000-year time skip. Speaker for the Dead is a 3,000-year time skip, where he's just kind of wandering around at relativistic speeds, not sure what to do with life. Well, I guess actually it kind of goes back to what we were saying about the Hobbit. Is like, he was the hero. He's not anymore. He's just kind of wandering around. And then he finds himself on this one planet, and the story that goes from there, I think, is one of the best ever written.
Can you imagine doing that in an RPG? Can you just imagine? Can you imagine?
Yes, actually, that sounds like the start of an overpowered protagonist, like slice of life novel. Like, I can
absolutely.
Totally...
But imagine in the first novel going like, "Wow, this guy got really OP, just like destroyed all the alien armada," and like book 2 is like 3,000 years later, he's kind of bored. Like, can you imagine? Yeah. But I think there's ways. I have like this idea for one of my books where there is going to be a time skip, but if I were to do that, I would probably have the time skip signal a new series. Like have a new series from a different point of view, maybe including the same characters, but after a time skip, maybe that could work. I have like the same,
like Boruto.
Yeah. Or
you can't see me doing a fake smile right now, but yeah.
like no. Like to be honest, I have read Naruto, and I think I dropped off sometime in Shippuden because again, like to me, it was this like ever increasing power escalation wasn't fun, right? Because it's to me it's too much of a good thing. I might be an edgelord. But it means that I like the edging more than anything else. Sorry, I had to make that joke. Yeah. Coming to the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
Shoutouts.
I've got a lot of shoutouts. Hold on.
Just keep it brief because I have to go.
Yep. No problem. Hold on. I'll just go down the list. This is not in any particular order. There's Lunadea's stories still and Pokemon Bunny. There's a Dual Class by Arthur Inverse. There's a Magus Reborn and Tao of Money by B. Or sorry, I know him as B. But he's Extra 26. There is. Hold on, let me find more. There's the Dragonair by Meg. I don't actually know what his railroad name is, but the Dragonair. There's Dungeon Diver by K.
Yeah. There's
Black Market by MG and Driver. Industrial Mage by Nectar. If I'm missing anyone else, I'm very sorry. I didn't have a list of people I wanted to shout, so I just kind of improvised that. But
it's no one ever does, and it's completely fine. Like everyone listening to this podcast will completely understand. All right. With that being said, I think we're nearing the end of the show. As we discussed earlier, we've already had an hour of bonus material, so there won't be any bonus material after the show this time. Also because I have to go. I have an appointment I have to meet. Bedivere, thank you so much. Any last words?
Yes, I do have last words. My Bunny Girl Evolution launches on Amazon on July 1st. Sound Booth Theater, Jeff Hayes, Andrea Parsnow, Tess Irondale, and I don't think I ever actually got the name of the last one, are all playing side characters to Dory Sack's main narration.
Oh, Dory Sachs is really, really good.
Yes.
Like really good.
Yes. So that goes live on ebook and audio on July 1st. The pre-order isn't up yet. It might be up by the time this podcast goes live.
Hopefully so. Go check it out. I'm going to put a link down below. Thank you so much.
Yep.
And I will see you next
All
time.
right, thank you.
Haha, avatars can't wave.